Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone.
The bright, dark green parsley is full of vitamins and minerals. Parsley is one of the healthiest foods we can eat. Parsley helps to prevent and treat anemia, garlic breath, fevers, liver problems, kidney stones, gallstones. Parsley helps to prevent and treat arthritis, body fat, high blood pressure, indigestion, coughing, boils, gonorrhea, syphilis. Parsley expels worms and relieves gas. Parsley is good for prostate, cancer, eye and brain nerves. Garlic helps earache and ear infection, immunity against bad germs and viruses. I buy my parsley at El Super in the Atrisco Shopping Center on Central west of the Rio Grande. 3 bunches for 99 cents. El Super has good prices on many kinds of fruits and vegetables. I eat about 1 large bunch, this is 1 bunch, of parsley a day. I blend parsley in my main smoothies, one of over 20 ingredients. I also blend parsley with carrots and apples, garlic, and extra hot red chili pepper for my first morning smoothie. I aim to plant it in my garden soon. Men, especially as you get older, for a healthy prostate, eat every day 2 to 4 tablespoons, not teaspoons, tablespoons, 2 to 4 tablespoons of raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds. Raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds. Either chew them or blend them fresh and consume them, and walk a lot, many blocks on many days. Dance to beautiful music. Jump or bounce on a trampoline. Very important for a healthy prostate. When our loved ones are dying, make sure they know if we are ready to listen to their deepest feelings and fears, if we're ready to listen to their best and worst memories from life, if we're ready to listen to their regrets, their mistakes, their painful lessons, their hidden secrets, to their wisdom. Never lie to our dying loved ones. Never bullshit them with, "You'll soon be up and around. You're looking better every day." Many dying loved ones need and want friends and relatives who can face they are dying. We need to touch much and hug our dying loved ones, unless we know they do not want to be touched and hugged. Ask their forgiveness. Forgive them. Welcome their personal questions. Thank them. Sincerely compliment them. The time is now. Many survivors cry their regrets at silent graves. Listening to our dying loved ones is infinitely better than a fancy funeral, an expensive casket, spending hundreds of dollars on flowers, use that money instead to help living, desperately poor, sick, hungry children who have no home. I love to see mountains. I love to see beautiful flowers. I love to see gorgeous sunsets. I love to see the naked bodies of lean, healthy, physically fit men, brown men, black men, native men, Asian men, white men, men who have no shame about their naked body. On one wall of my room where I live, I have many photos of attractive naked men, some of them enjoying each other's bodies, fucking, sucking, cock, ass licking. I would be ashamed as hell to have photos on my wall of soldiers in uniform holding guns. I would be ashamed as hell to have photos on my wall of boxers bruising and injuring each other, of football players brain damaging each other. The first place I enjoyed mixed public nudity, men and women naked together in public, was in 1972 at the Spence Hot Springs in the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico. 52 years ago, I was 26 then. I fell in love with being naked. I went to the hot springs dozens of times in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I have a photo of the official federal government sign in the parking lot there at Spence Springs many years ago. The sign said, "Bathing suits not required Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Bathing suits required Thursday, Friday, Saturday." It was a compromise solution for those who enjoy naked bodies and those who do not. People came to the hot springs from many states and other nations. Sadly, that official federal government sign was removed years ago. I've heard people can be arrested now for being naked at the Spence Hot Springs. I have not been there for many years. I stopped riding in cars April 7th, 2001, almost 23 years ago. It was the main place I missed after I stopped riding in cars. After the hit and run I suffered May 16th, 2023, I accepted rides in cars. No bus runs close to the springs. If I were there, I would want to be naked, and I do not want to get arrested for being naked, so my not being there is easier to accept. 52 years ago, since 1972, I've been an enthusiastic nudist. As far as I know, for many years, Albuquerque's most well-known nudist. I have photos my mother took of me naked as an adult. I was often naked as an adult in the presence of my mother and my father. And for many years, I posed naked for hundreds of artists in Illinois, Santa Fe, at UNM, and other places in Albuquerque. I enjoy living in my one sunny rented room, 9.5 by 12 feet, with 6 windows in the house of a friend. I enjoy visits from new friends and old friends. I love personal questions and heart-to-heart conversations. The more deep and real and personal, the better. Loneliness is as deadly as smoking cigarettes. Loneliness is as deadly as smoking cigarettes. Too much sitting also kills people. If we're physically able, the best exercises are walking, dancing, bouncing, or jumping on a trampoline. Here's what to do if we are stopped by the police. And I got this information from the American Civil Liberties Union. If we're stopped by the police, think carefully about our moves, our words, our body language, our emotions, and do not get into an argument with the police. Remember, anything we say or do before the police can be used against us. And keep our hands where the police can see them. Do not run. How many people have been shot running from the police? Do not touch any police officer's body. Do not resist, even if we believe we are innocent. Do not complain on the scene, or let the police, or tell the police they're going to receive a complaint. Do not do that. Do not make any statements regarding the incident. Write down everything we remember as soon as possible after leaving the police. Try to find witnesses and their names and phone numbers if we are injured by the police. Take photos of the injuries as soon as possible. And stay seek medical attention first. This is small print, so I'm having a little trouble. And take notes if we feel our rights have been violated. File a written complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division or a civilian complaint board. But do not get into any physical or verbal or emotional hassles with the cops. None. Zero. We all will die. By living healthy in every way, every day, we can greatly improve our chances of a long, healthy life until the day we die. But accidents happen. So well I know from last May. Violence happens. And tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone on earth. Sooner or later, we all die. And refusing to think about death, refusing to talk about it, refusing to prepare for our death, does not make death go away. We need to put one or more persons we trust, who are close to us, in charge of making decisions for our care when we cannot. We need to tell them clearly what kind of medical treatment we want and what we don't want when we're dying. To tell them how comfortable we want to be, how we want people to treat us when we're dying, what we want our loved ones to know. And this wonderful 5 wishes used by 30 million people in the world, and it's in many languages, I guess about 30 languages now. I filled out this copy in 2018. It's a legal document for anyone 18 and older in New Mexico and most states. When it is signed, witnessed, and dated. And to get it from the internet, go to 5wishes.org. Fill it out. Make sure your persons in charge know where you keep it, and give them a filled out photocopy for them to keep. It's so clear, so simple, and so thorough. Millions of people have used 5 Wishes. It's available in 30 languages and in Braille. If you're close to death, if you're in a coma, not expected to recover, if you have permanent and severe brain damage, do you want life support treatment? I don't. How and where do you prefer to die? In a hospital or at home? For me, at home. Do you want your doctor to give you medicine to relieve your pain, even if that means you will be drowsy or sleep more than you would otherwise? Well, for me, it depends how severe the pain is. Do you want certain people with you when you die? Yes, my closest friends. I want them to touch me. I want them to hug me if they want to. Do you want your friends, family, and others to forgive you for when you have wronged them? I sure do. Do you want family, friends, and others to know that you forgive them for when they have wronged you? Yes, of course. Do you want all your family to make peace with each other before your death, if they can? Yes, I do. Do you want everyone involved to respect your wishes, even if they do not agree with your wishes? Yes. Do you want to be cremated or buried? For me, buried in my about $60 homemade coffin. Where do you want your body or ashes buried? San Jose de Armijo Cemetery on the west side of Albuquerque, a beautiful dirt cemetery. How do you want to be remembered? I want to be remembered in many ways, but especially as a true friend, a very romantic gay man, in love, openly in love at the same time with several men. Do you want to donate body organs? Possibly, if there are any organs they consider worth donating at my age. What songs or readings or messages or persons speaking at your memorial service? Religious or not religious? Not religious. Do you want money contributions to go to a special cause or organization? Many important questions. I also hope to be remembered as a person who lived my conscience, lived the truth as best I saw it, dedicated myself to working for justice and peace and human rights, and confessing clearly when I fail. Let your loved ones know for sure exactly what you want when you die. If you change your mind after you fill out this form, 5 wishes, just tear up the one and get a new one and fill it out the way you want to. New. Throw away the old one. When my mother Lillian died in 1982, 42 years ago this month, and my dad became in some ways the living person closest to me, in spite of our many disagreements and conflicts, arguments. My dad died 30 years ago this month, 1994. He was 81. My dad was a foster child. He found out that the mother and dad raising him were not his birth parents when a kid in school told him. What a shock it must have been for my dad to find that out from a kid in school. If he was a baby in an orphanage, he probably starved for hugs and tender touch, especially if there were not enough workers to attend to all the kids in the orphanage. For many years, I think my dad wondered who his birth parents were, why they did not keep him, and wondered if he had sisters and brothers. Many years later, I tried to find out, but no luck. My dad quit school after 8th grade. He began working hard on farms. My dad did not go to high school, but he wanted me to have both high school and college. I got good grades in college, but I dropped out. I got bored. I much prefer learning in the University of Life. Maybe as a foster child, my dad felt he had to work extra hard to show he was worth keeping. He was in his 20s during the Great Depression. He started his business buying and selling cattle and hogs in the 1940s. My now 89-year-old brother and some of his family still run that business that my dad began in the 1940s. The oldest cattle and hog market in that county in Illinois. At his business, Dad was very much in charge, but in other places, he often was shy and quiet. My dad was a workaholic. My mother spent a lot of money buying small stuff no one needs. She later regretted buying all that small stuff. My dad never learned to enjoy music or reading books. He was addicted to work. The marriage of my dad and my mother was miserable for both of them. At least once, when my mother and dad were fighting, I was afraid he would kill her. I'm so glad they were not boozers and no gun was in the house. My mother and my dad were miserable cellmates until death in the prison of marriage. I wish they had parted peacefully, or maybe had never gotten married in the first place. And after my mother died, my dad dated my mother's sister Susie for 12 years until he died. Susie's husband had died years earlier. Dad enjoyed going with her to many places. He and my mother suffered emotional war much of their marriage, but it was much different dating Susie for my dad. They each had their own home. They each had their own money. They never got married. They never had sex. My aunt was a strict conservative Baptist. But they enjoyed many times together. My aunt was lean. She enjoyed dressing up. She never got fat. She never suffered awful sickness like my mother did. My dad liked my mustache, but there years ago, he did not like my long hair, which was much longer than it is now. He did not like the beard I had. And back then, I often wore dark or black clothes. He did not like me wearing. He thought dark clothes were for old people. And back then, I often went to bed late, felt like shit the next day. I wish I could tell my dad now that I go to bed early, usually between 9 and 10. And then, back then, when he was still alive, I very foolishly drove cars and trucks, sleepy, many times, risking my life, risking other people's lives. I enjoy living simply below the U.S. poverty level. I've become an expert in saving money. I wish I could tell both mother and dad these things now. I apologize for keeping him awake with music and talking with friends and visiting who were visiting me there on the farm. My dad was afraid about my being arrested in protests in Washington, D.C., New York City, Omaha. I aim to speak right and live the truth, but I now aim not to get arrested. I never drank much booze, but I have drunk no booze at all for many years. Booze is slow poison to every cell of the body. And when I worked part-time in his business, he and I often rode together in his trucks, and much of the time, sadly, no conversation. I wish my dad had asked me many questions about my life, my feelings. I love personal questions. In 1986, when my boyfriend David from Michigan visited me on the farm, my dad took a photo of him and me. And years later, when David and I were no longer in touch, and that I was feeling down that day, my dad encouraged me to phone David. And when Mother and Dad were living, I lived part-time with them in Illinois, part-time here in New Mexico. I had a taste of what many immigrants feel, having your heart torn between two homes, hundreds of miles apart. And one night there, my dad and I had an especially awful argument. My room was upstairs. He slept downstairs. I felt I could no longer cope living there in that house with him. But the next morning, on his own, my dad apologized to me. His apology helped me so much. And when I was here in New Mexico, I wrote him many letters, and he saved those letters together in a drawer. He suffered asthma for over 40 years. He often sat up to sleep, to be able to breathe better. He suffered heart trouble 15 years. He suffered many headaches, but he faithfully mailed me manila envelopes over 200 times, sending me my mail from Illinois to here in Albuquerque. Articles from his newspaper and a check. My dad suffered a colostomy, a hole in the side for his shit to come out in a bag he wore. Colostomies are awful. Fortunately, he did not have cancer in the bowel, so his intestine was connected again a year later. He was in the hospital many times. My Aunt Susie loved me, but sadly she never fully accepted my being gay. And Dad felt much pressure from her and from my very religious brother against my being gay. My dad had never known any openly gay person before me. And once when I was working at his business, years after my mother had died, a young, very good-looking, shirt-free farmer came, and after this man left, I told my dad I would love to fuck with him. My dad said, "You better not let your brother hear that." And I think I then told my dad, sometimes the person who seems strong against gays is fighting their own gay feelings inside. And often when I was living there, when I would leave the house in the evenings to go someplace, I would kiss my dad as he sat stiff like a statue in his chair. January 8th, 1994, when I left to come back to Albuquerque, I told Dad to initiate hugging me, make the first move, when my nephew David came to pick me up to drive me to town to catch the bus. I wanted David, my nephew, to see my dad making the first move to kiss me that day. I wonder if David remembers that. And the last long trip my dad had ever flown some years before that was to visit me here. And January 8th, 1994, when he made the first move to kiss me as I left the house, sadly, that was the last day I saw my dad alive. The weapons designed for many years at Sandia Labs and Los Alamos Labs are aimed to murder far more men, women, children than the many millions Hitler and the Nazis killed in the concentration camps, the gas ovens, and World War II. And even if the United States never again drops nuclear bombs on cities, as it did on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in 1945. The billions of dollars, the vast resources, the brain power to make those bombs are stolen from the poor of this world. The billions of dollars, the vast resources, the brain power to make those bombs could provide decent shelter, clean water, nutritious food for many, hundreds of millions of desperately poor people. These bombs are murdering poor people right now. And these poor people are just as dead as if someone lined them up and blew out their brains. And even if the United States never again drops nuclear bombs on cities, and the United States is the only nation in the history of the world to drop nuclear bombs on cities, the radioactive and chemical contamination from the weapons labs, the weapons factories, the weapons testing can make sick and kill multitudes of people for thousands of years into the future if the human family survives. Multitudes of children born deformed or retarded. Multitudes of people with cancers or damaged immune systems. The cleanup costs for the nuclear bombs, radioactive and chemical poisons in the United States alone is $300 billion or more. And even if the U.S. never again drops nuclear bombs on cities, these bombs are a constant backup threat against many nations, smaller nations of poor people worldwide, to keep them down, to keep them under the bloody terrorist control of the United States empire and of multinational corporations. Robbing the poor in those countries of their labor and their natural resources. Either do what we tell you or suffer, is what the United States is telling them constantly with the nuclear bomb threat and many other ways of threatening them. Keeping the poor of those countries in economic slavery. And some of you working at Sandia and Los Alamos weapons labs, Lockheed Martin, Kirtland Air Force Base, are torn inside in your conscience. And just as many U.S. white people were torn 200 years ago about enslaving black people, I urge you to repent, to wake up, quit your job in mass murder. In Germany under Hitler, many Germans said they needed jobs. Times were bad. So they took jobs at the death camps, slaughtering millions of Jews, gypsies, gays, handicapped people, communists, Jehovah's Witnesses. And these Germans running the death camps excused themselves that it was for national security. They said those prisoners were the curse of the nation. The guards and the secretaries in the Nazi concentration camps were clean, on time, carefully dressed, polite to their friends, joked with each other, and mass murdered people for a paycheck. Many Nazi officers wore shoes polished to a perfect shine. Many secretaries typed fast with no mistakes. But all for what? To hold jobs officially slaughtering human beings. And the same damn crimes against humanity, and much worse today, at Sandia Weapons Lab, Los Alamos Weapons Lab, Lockheed Martin, Kirtland Air Force Base. Because if all those weapons designed are ever used, they would kill far more people than Hitler did. Albuquerque's worst criminal insanity is nuclear bombs. And many of you well-dressed men who work at Sandia and Los Alamos Labs, Lockheed Martin, Kirtland Air Force Base, you would not want any blood on your car seat or your living room carpet, but preparing to shed oceans of other people's blood is your daily business. And many of you well-dressed church-going women at Sandia and Los Alamos Weapons Labs, Lockheed Martin, Kirtland Air Force Base, would be ashamed as hell to sell your body for money on East Central. But you sell your conscience, you sell your brain, you sell your career year after year to nuclear bombs. And this is far worse evil than selling bodies on East Central. And many of you men in well-pressed suits and uniforms would be ashamed to have your son or daughter sell drugs to hustle money. But you sell your conscience, your brain, your career to the gods of war, money, U.S. empire. You parents working on the weapons of mass murder, some of you tell your children, an honest B in school is better than a dishonest A. And you're right. But do you not realize that a life-giving job at minimum wage is infinitely better than a mass murder job at Sandia and Los Alamos Weapons Lab, Kirtland Air Force Base, Lockheed Martin? No matter how large your paycheck, no matter how many your fringe benefits. And talk about street gangs showing no conscience in drive-by shootings. What about gangs of scientists, secretaries, suppliers who show no conscience at all in preparing the bombings of whole cities of men, women, and children? Talk about the 9/11 atrocity at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Sandia Weapons Lab, Los Alamos Weapons Lab, Lockheed Martin, Kirtland Air Force Base, far worse, terrorizing and targeting many whole nations. Sandia and Los Alamos Weapons Lab are the worst violent murder gangs in New Mexico, committing far more violence than all the New Mexico street gangs combined. Where are the New Mexico priests, rabbis, preachers, teachers, politicians, newspaper editors, business leaders who have the conscience and the courage to say this publicly over and over again? Parents, do you want your kids to be honest? Do you ever tell them to lie for you, saying you're not home when you are home, when someone phones for you or comes to the door and you do not want to speak to that person? Parents, do you lie to your kids about your own past mistakes? People learn to lie if their families lie. Kids learn to lie when telling the truth makes their parents more upset more angry than telling the truth about what they did wrong. Parents, do your kids hear you lying to your friends about your lives? Do your kids hear you being two-faced, saying one thing to someone face to face and something very different behind that person's back to someone else? Many years ago, the U.S. government gave Native Americans blankets contaminated with smallpox to sicken them, to kill them. And many years ago, the U.S. government gave Native Americans the 4 white killers to eat: white sugar, white flour, salt, and lard. White sugar, white flour, salt, and lard cause fat bodies, diabetes, alcoholism. Sugar is the gateway drug. I stopped the damn sugar shit over 40 years ago because as a kid and in my 20s, I was severely addicted to ice cream, cake, cookies, candy. But I woke up seeing how my mother suffered from that sugar shit. My sweets are lots of healthy, whole, fresh fruit. Lots of healthy, whole, fresh fruit. I eat many apples a day. Apples are my favorite fruit, but I eat many kinds. My mother loved me deeply. She took me as a kid to the dentist many times. I had many cavities from that sugar shit. And she saw to it that my cavities were filled. She wanted me to keep my teeth all my life. Her teeth were pulled and she got false teeth in her 30s or 40s, either before or soon after I was born, when she was 38. But far more important than going to the dentist would have been eating only healthy, raw plant foods. But sadly, as I say, she and I both were severely addicted to sugar shit for many years. I have no teeth left. And many years ago, in the 1990s, I suffered like a dog very painful infections in my decayed teeth. Learn from my mistakes. Going to sleep 1 hour or more earlier and then getting up 1 hour or more earlier can help prevent major depression. The hours that we sleep before midnight, hour for hour, benefit us more than the hours we sleep after midnight, hour for hour. I love to hug men and women who enjoy hugging. Hugs can lower the stress hormone cortisol. Hugs can strengthen our immune system to keep us from getting sick. Hugs can help lower blood pressure and heart rate in stressful situations. I love to hug men and women who enjoy hugging with me. All ages, all colors, all sizes. My favorite quote from Albert Einstein. He said, more and more, I have come to value charity and love of others above everything else. All our lauded technological progress, our very civilization, is like an axe in the hand of a pathological criminal. Every culture on earth, every culture is a mix of kindness and cruelty. Every culture a mix of wisdom and stupidity. Every culture on earth a mix of insight and insanity. I aim to learn from and adopt the best from every culture, every person I meet, and to reject the crap. Adults never give kids candy or any sugar shit. No ice cream, no sodas, no cookies, no cake. Sugar, as I said a bit ago, is the gateway drug to fat bodies, diabetes, alcoholism, other drug addiction. Adults giving kids candy on Halloween, Christmas, or any time is wrong. No matter how much they want it, no matter how much they expect it. Imagine the lean, good-looking boy or girl 40 or 50 years from now going 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time for dialysis because of kidney disease, which came from diabetes, which came from eating the unhealthy, deadly sweets, the sugar shit. If you give a damn about the kids you love, will you play roulette with their future health by feeding them anything with added sugar or any other factory fake food? Diabetes is an epidemic causing blindness, strokes, paralysis, chopped off toes and feet, and even whole legs. Diabetes is hell. And the gateway drug sugar sets up millions from infancy on to become alcoholics. And incidentally, do not drink fruit juice. Eat the whole, fresh fruit. We need the fiber. Our example as adults every day, if we live and eat healthy, can help many youth avoid the misery of suffering sickness many years later. Most sicknesses can be prevented. So why in the hell suffer? Life is too short to suffer from preventable sickness. I love passion in romance and in living all of my life. I want my passion always to be guided by compassion for all people. Passion by itself is like a fire. It can keep us from freezing to death, or it can kill us. Passion by itself is like a river. It can irrigate our crops to keep us alive, or it can kill us in a flood. I love passion, but I want my passion always to be guided by compassion for all people. Sometimes what first seemed blessings become curses. And sometimes what first seemed curses become blessings. I'm deeply indebted to many people, a great variety of people, who have taught me, loved me, inspired me. I constantly collect wisdom on how to live and how not to live. I constantly collect wisdom to live that wisdom and to share it with anyone interested on this program or in conversations wherever. In romance between a man and a woman, or between men, or between women, often one is more attracted than the other. And often one is ready to go deeper, more personal in conversation. And to go deeper and more free than the other in sex. Licking the whole body, including the asshole. And I once had a medical doctor tell me that actually the asshole has less germs than the mouth. I certainly did not know that before. And the more eager one needs to be patient with the partner, or find another partner more open and ready. And be honest about it with that first partner who is not so free. If we try to pry open a rosebud, we can ruin the rose. No force, no pressure. If we try to pry open a rosebud, we can ruin the rose. If this nation stopped stealing and hogging the world's wealth, if this nation stopped murdering moms, dads, and kids in Gaza, Afghanistan, Iraq, many nations, the United States would have far less enemies. The main goal worldwide of the U.S. government, sadly, is grabbing more wealth, more resources, more cheap labor by any means necessary, regardless how many millions are robbed, tortured, starved, imprisoned, and murdered. The main goal worldwide of the U.S. government is sadly not now and never has been genuine democracy, freedom, justice, and human rights for all people on earth. The U.S. spends more for war than the next highest 9 nations combined. Absolutely evil. I thank Mark, an expert who does such stellar work for me, running the controls and putting the messages on the screen and running the cameras. And of course, many other weeks besides Mark, Eddie and Travis, but they are working elsewhere today. Please feel free to speak with me if you see me. My phone number at home is 505-243-0634. My fresh kiss. Good night.
Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone.